we may not have to go until 9 o'clock. It's a lot of stuff that isn't necessarily have to be done collectively, but it is something we've got to have some discussion about. With respect to that above, what we're going to establish is a baseline for each of these models. And that baseline, again, is a reference to the values and data we've collected to date. So what the feedback has told us from the engagements, what the group has felt, we can take off of any of these models and capture that as, we'll call it above the line items, things that we could possibly add back if we wanted to or do differently. And then how, and probably more importantly, how we're going to capture the items below the line. When we got to start talking about a few more items that are a little more discomforting, like, not putting ADA in everything, not putting ADA in 2 schools, and schools that may be subject to closing in 2 years or 5 years. We got to try to capture those as goals so we can test those theories. But I think we need to have some values applied to them, scaling, to tell the community where we're at. So we can get a feeling of, to test those feelings and those judgments against the community saying. Does that make sense?
I think we said yesterday, and maybe it's worth repeating, that those cost reduction items that were itemized, those are pretty simple to judge no matter what model we're in. But there are other things that would require architectural changes. For example, cutting square feet, things like that, like we talked about, some of the things that we talked about at the end of the meeting in terms of do you not fix up certain buildings that are going to be on the closing block sooner, all of those type of things. So I think it's more than just listing, ADA and air conditioning and all that.
No, what I'm saying, those are just everything you just said, Jeff, are all individual components or bullet points that we have to list. The items on that sheet there are the obvious big ticket items.
Big ticket, yes.
That, they're global. Those are an easy application from just don't do that, across the border. But as a group, how do you take those or how do you rank them? How do you value one of those components over another? Maybe we should just start there and just try to capture those 5 things. Say, just these 5 things in a vacuum, how would you scale those 5 items based on everything you know today?
And
So
so everybody knows.
Those 5.
I put the furniture as last.
I think that's the easiest sell.
Yep.
Yeah, so I put that as 5. I put.
Didn't we say though, John, Julie, excuse me for 1 sec. Didn't we say that the lighting and electrical service upgrades should be divided into 2 parts?
Right, that's what I was going to say. So I tried to make copies before I came here, but had printer issues. So I did email it to John, and it is sorted differently now. So I have 1 copy, but the other copies didn't print.
Value, right, Dan?
What's that?
That just changed the value. It doesn't change the idea.
Right. Yeah. So it didn't change the overall, the total reduction, but the now it's eliminates sprinklers, lighting, and paint at the existing is 1, and then the other is HVAC and electrical upgrades is another 1. So we eliminated the 1 line item. So if John emails that out to the group. Actually, I got everybody's emails too. So, John, if you want me to do that from that email you sent out the other day, I can do that.
You could get that out. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Does it make sense logically that, so whenever, if we prioritize HVAC, that naturally kind of sucks in lighting, electrical, and sprinklers, right? Because once you get to the point where you're putting HVAC in, to put things back in place, it's just so easy to do the other stuff.
Well,
That's-
I would add sprinklers to that same.
Probably,
What?
yeah, please.
John, could I ask a couple questions here? I put them in my email to you this morning. I thought we were gonna go over a bunch of stuff that people were thinking about overnight. Again, I'm looking for a way,
I just want to answer,
I'm,
yeah, 1 second, I want to make sure we answer Julie's question first.
okay, go ahead.
And Dan, if you could speak to the grouping, I think my understanding is the HVAC is a component that does not necessarily impact the ceilings like the sprinkler system does, because the type of systems we're talking about, potentially. So,
Right, there would be,
I don't think, but you automatically tie them together.
the HVAC would obviously be more efficiently put in if we had the ceilings down, but depending on the system that we use, we can, we can leave the ceilings in place and just take out certain sections where ductwork is, or, piping can be fit into the ceilings, as long as they're acoustical ceilings,
What about,
which most of them are.
what about, removing the ceiling in the corridors
Right.
and running linearly and then stubbing in, so you don't have to do much with the ceilings in the classroom?
Yeah, and that's pretty typical for a school design, is the majority of it's down the corridor. So we do have, like in that HVAC number, there is some ceiling replacement, but it's not all the ceiling replacement. So there is, we do know that we're gonna have to cut and make adjustments to the ceiling and the walls to get the new HVAC in.
Okay,
So-
but if you didn't disturb the ceilings and you ran the major stuff through the corridors, then the question is, do you do the lighting and the upgrades above the ceilings? Or do you, in an attempt to try to get the costs down more than these 5 items would do, is that within the cards?
So if you took down, or if you put everything in the ceiling in the corridor and just stubbed it into the classrooms, which is, there are some designs like that, you still would probably have to replace the lights in the corridor.
Oh, no, I
because
mean
you're
in
gonna
the
pull-
classroom.
Yeah, we'd be able to avoid that, and that's kind of why we have it broke out the way that it is. Where if you're doing fire protection, you gotta go everywhere, where HVAC, you can kind of be more selective about it.
So let me ask you a question. Let's say you wanted to sprinkler, you wanted to improve the HVAC, but you didn't necessarily want to upgrade the lighting and the electrical above the classroom ceilings. What would the savings be over the number above the line? That would still get you HVAC upgrades and sprinkling. It would be a lesser number, right?
Yeah, so you would be salvaging the lighting, which would be, there'd be a cost to that. So that's why if you salvage existing lighting and you're putting it back in and it's old and it's not in great shape, the electrician's going to put a premium on that because they may break some. There's components to that increase the cost, where it's most like your best buy is to buy the new lights, because it's just if you're salvaging
Within the existing ceiling?
right. If you salvage them,
Yeah, I'll tell you,
you're paying money to do
Additionally, if you go to LED, you save money operationally.
that. Right.
What did you do at the
yeah,
high school?
it's done.
You replaced all the lighting.
And,
Within the existing
John wants
ceiling?
to talk here. Can we- John, go
That
ahead.
would still save money.
like, there's a big echo in here, every to my
Because you're not
phone.
taking down the ceiling.
No, to the point that we've got fixtures that we can't even get funds for, that we're having to makeshift with Band-Aids.
We replaced the
Components in,
ceiling.
so to Dan's point, if I try to salvage and repurpose, and then not gain the LED efficiencies that we're going to get out of it in the classroom. It's just, you're wasting money at that point. It just becomes so cost ineffective that it just wouldn't be worth having a conversation. So to that point, I really want to see how to get back on the items, not get into how to do them. I don't want to get into breaking them out and say, well, it could be 10 million versus 9 million. That's not the purpose tonight. Tonight is to sit there and evaluate as a group how you scale and judge these different components. If we have to start picking and choosing, if that's where we get to, that's what the board wants to get to. They want to have our guidance on that, if you will. What items and why would we prioritize them that way? The how and the what, the final dollars are going to come out of it. Just in theory and concept, how would we prioritize these items?
I would put elevators as 4.
Julia, I'm on your page.
What?
I'm on the same page. I would put air conditioning as 1. So,
I would put air conditioning as 1 as well.
And lighting and
And I
electric at the
think
same
when you're doing
time.
that, you tie in lighting and electrical at number 2,
yes.
and then sprinklers is 3.
Do you think that fits in with the feedback we've heard so far? Either time you think it would fit with our group and with the community feedback?
You see, my feeling of the community feedback is they wanted all those things.
Well, but they rated them. So fire sprinklers were the second most important. Then was the most important, but that doesn't really play into this. And
What was the most important?
ADA was like that.
Oh, okay.
ADA was 4th, so that's why the elevators could go further down on the priority list, I think.
Okay.
I don't see where we had AC. At least in my notes, I did not look, make fun of the actual report.
And we don't need to prove everything tonight, just really just trying to get that first pass. We can spend some time this weekend and Tuesday trying to find this out based on the data to share with the group.
It's a pretty substantial add back, the HVAC. I mean, it's like 25 million. It's the most expensive one, across all of them.
Yeah.
So it's not insignificant.
But I think
No, I agree,
it's hard to talk.
but I think you extend the lifespan of a lot of your equipment by having it.
And you also, much better educationally. I think that HVAC is required. If we're talking about a referendum, that's going to be a lot of money. And even if it's only 80 million, that's still a lot of money. And you say you're not going to get air conditioning, I think that you're much better off spending the extra money, getting the air conditioning, the lighting, and all of these things where appropriate. And one of the things we can discuss is if there are exceptions to where you might put it. But I think that we're going to need these things. Now, an exception, I believe that it should be in every student education area, and that includes gyms. In a basement, on the other hand, I think you only need it if you feel that you have to have something down there because you're going to have too much moisture and you're going to therefore damage the building. But if you're not going to damage the building, you don't need air conditioning where students don't go. Well, and faculty. You need it in faculty room. But where people basically don't go except for like a storeroom. Now, granted, that's not going to be a lot of savings, but I think as a general philosophy, that's one thing that we would look at, is where people don't go in general for stuff, you probably don't need air conditioning. But I think you do need it wherever you're going to have an educational experience, and that would include a gym.
You made a statement in one of the earlier meetings that the windows don't open. Is that true?
Yes.
None of the windows open?
They're not allowed to
They're not
because of
allowed to
security.
open.
Because of security.
Right.
Okay.
And you can't prop the doors open either. So there's no ventilation at all.
And Rick, that's a perfect example of, that's the bullet point. We want to, under the HVAC topic, here's another layer of testing that component. If we have to do it just globally, here's a little more surgical approach, is that method that use outlet. So that's a bullet below the HVAC. And we may come up with some variations of that, but that's the kind of thing I'm looking to get from the groups now.
Yeah, I remember 30 years ago when we fixed up the buildings in the old 108, we literally put in screens. This was in 1989. And of course, 10 years later after, was it Julie Dan? Lori Dan
I was
came
on the
in
board
and,
then. Yeah.
came in and was gonna shoot the place up. We never opened the windows again.
What's the difference between ventilation only versus air conditioning?
The difference is the compressors.
Right. I mean, what's that in dollar amount?
Well, we can try to look at that, but it's, when we're replacing, an air handling unit for the heating, we're also, it's going to be your most efficient time to add AC to that as well. So, so there is a premium obviously to have the AC component, but it's not nearly as expensive as if you did it, as its own single component.
So I'm trying to get,
we can,
is it worth looking at or not?
I don't know that it would be. So you were asking if it's just AC, if you just added AC as a separate
Well, you're saying
component, or
it has no ventilation at all.
Right.
And the ventilation can be handled mechanically without compressors, just fans, right?
Mhm.
So I'm trying to see, instead of 24 million, would it be 12 million to ventilate?
No.
No.
It wouldn't
Be a couple million.
Yeah,
At
you're
most.
talking
Couple
about
million
2 or
off.
3, yeah.
Cheaper, okay. Whose turn? Can I make a comment, or are you through listing your items? Ann, you were,
Julie, go
I
ahead.
went through the survey, and at the time, out of 5 factors, air conditioning was listed as the 5th most important, but I think that was prior to us explaining that there's a security issue with air conditioning, So I think that this would actually be a good thing to retest during the forum, once we give that understanding of why it's so needed nowadays versus in the past.
Yeah, it's one of the big challenges with the AC today. You can't get ventilation the same way.
Right. So that was not a well-known, outcome or reasoning for needing AC. So I think we really need to, at the next forum, highlight that and then retest what people's preference or priority level is for air conditioning before we just go off of whatever the last survey was. Because I know from my own experience talking to people that did not cross the line. And when I told them that, it totally changed their mind. So
Sure.
I don't want to, I still think it needs to be high up there just because of my own experience talking to people, but, I know we want to base it on some of our community feedback right now, but I think right now for that one particular item, it is not valid feedback because it wasn't given to them in a most educated state.
It wasn't informed
Well, we
feedback.
can highlight those points.
Exactly.
Right. And we need to.
Yeah.
So outside of that, then order went, fire sprinklers was 1, STEM was 2, technology was 3, ADA was 4, and AC was 5.
Okay. So I personally think they all need to be on the list, and I understand that your priorities, and probably they are. If I had to choose, I'd probably do pretty much what you're talking about, Julie, especially on the FF&E. But I don't want to choose, except maybe on FF&E.
is there like a percentage of FF&E?
To be honest,
Well, I mean, what is it exactly? Because we have furniture today, and
Right.
some of it is more modern than others. So I think we might, in some cases, be replacing stuff that's relatively new and quite similar to what we would functionally want, or plan for.
Yeah, I think we talked, it was $25,000 per room.
Yeah, we put it in like as a square foot amount, but I think
John
that's
gave
what
us-
Don was doing it as 25,000.
Yeah, Don McKay gave us $25,000 per room. Clearly that can be spaced out.
And FF&E stands for
Furniture,
Furni-
fixtures, and equipment.
Right, so it'd be Promethean boards, it would be the desks, the chairs, all
Okay.
that stuff.
Okay.
And
mean,
I
we're
really
not
think
getting
you
the
could,
nitty-gritty there. I think prioritizing kindergarten FF&E would be important because there's a whole program shift at that grade level where the equipment needed is going to be very different.
But I think, they've already phased that in, or a lot of it.
I think that we should let the educators pick what is prioritized, but that we may very well want to assume that we say we do half of it as part of the referendum, and the educators pick which half, and then the expectation is that gradually over the next 5 or 10 years, out of operating funds, the rest would be done as required. Does that make sense? Everybody okay with that, or is it a concept, or?
Yeah, and you could almost maybe even go to 25%.
Yeah.
I mean, if HVAC is really your priority, I would start lower on the percentage for FF&E.
I also
and build
think
that,
you
know,
could
build
ask
that.
PTAs and PTOs to do fundraisers for that
Right.
sort of thing.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm not convinced that there aren't reductions that could be made above the line, which would allow more of these things below the line to be incorporated.
Yeah,
And we haven't attacked that at all.
right, we haven't gotten there yet. True statement. But I think we will.
Have you guys, and I'm sorry I wasn't here yesterday, did you get into this, is this kind of the beginning of this discussion?
It's kind of
tonight?
close
Okay,
enough to
okay.
the beginning.
You didn't miss much.
Thank you.
But I think the comment about HVAC, when you're thinking about it, to put that in when you're doing the rest of the work, when everything's a big mess, but to change out some desks
Right.
is really simple to do one by one.
Right.
Where doing the HVAC or the sprinklers while it's already under construction is a lot more efficient.
Right. So we as a group should recommend some percentage of the furniture be included in the referendum and then just punt it to the board.
I would do 25%.
Whatever, we can take a vote at the next meeting. But yeah, some percent.
Yeah, and it'd be good, I
Yeah.
think, if we
Yeah.
had more of a fact base for determining what that percentage should be. So, like, just as an example, I don't know, I could go back through the pictures, but I know, like, Ravinia, for example, I think their PTO had purchased, like, a lot of the new chairs, the configurable desks for the classroom. I think Indian Trail was like half and half done. Like it seemed like each elementary school was sort of on somewhere along the same path of where they were and updating and modernizing. I don't know, John, if that's like captured anywhere or if we could just shoot a quick email to all the principals to say like, what's the need exactly?
So I think that's a staff function. Why don't we just have the staff
Yeah.
do that rather than us?
Okay, so we don't need to come up right. No, right. So we don't need to come up with a percent. I'm saying
Right.
we can.
But we're
No,
also,
no, right?
aren't we also talking about the fact that we are going to be closing some elementary schools, which will have
More
some
furniture.
new furniture
Right.
in there,
Right,
which
and
could
Promethean
replace
boards.
some of the older furniture.
So
if
if we,
Absolutely.
if we have
remaining.
20% new furniture now
Good
and
point.
we have all these extra classrooms we're not going to be using, that'll all of a sudden be 30%.
Exactly. Right. I'm more comfortable with that kind of an approach.
Are the elevators for
Hold on.
ADA?
Jeff, can you wait one second? John, can you go ahead and say what you're going to say?
So how can you eliminate it?
No, I was just saying, what you guys are pointing out is exactly the logic. We can capture that tonight.
Okay.
Based on this X, Y, and Z approach, we believe the number could be here. As long as the approach holds true, you've outlined the rationale for that adjustment.
Okay.
Don't some of the
Not to say yes, to make
existing
sure.
schools
Okay.
have the
But,
elevator now?
and some things have changed. I mean, we don't even use Promethean boards so much anymore because everybody's got their own laptop. So, staff's gonna have to figure out what FF&E is.
I don't know what you mean.
It's just the ones where you touch it, where there are fancy stuff. Close enough?
So any other thing to discuss in this reduction consideration section?
I don't think so. It's-
Okay.
Something Ira brought up last night, which I
So, I'm comfortable with how prioritize and, we can go sit down this weekend, put some justification together. But I like what Rick had started off with underneath the HVAC side, is be able to capture subcomponents of those. How we can, if we have to compartmentalize those in any way, what could those approaches be?
Yeah, again, I think any place you do education or have people on a continuing basis, you should have air conditioning. But in other places not. But I don't, are there other opinions?
Can I ask a question? Everybody's always comparing us to other communities. How many of our surrounding communities have air-conditioned schools?
all but two.
All
All of them?
I think it's all but two. And we're talking, isn't Waukegan one of them? John, that doesn't?
or North Chicago.
I know they had full all-day kindergarten. They're all air-conditioned?
They're all air conditioned.
That's amazing.
We're 50 years behind.
Well, we only have about 2 weeks of summer up here.
Well,
During school year.
but the point is, it's not just summer. These things are ovens, even if it gets to 75 outside. You've got an oven in the room. And so it's not just about summer. It's about a significant percentage of the year. We can't have the education stop because it's hot in the room.
Fall is worse.
Yeah, look, it's, the example is very simple. It's a dog in the car with the windows closed. Okay? That's what these rooms are like. And, so it doesn't have to be that hot for that dog to die. So we really need to talk about this from that kind of perspective of what these rooms are actually like when you don't have air conditioning.
You mentioned last night,
Kind of graphic too.
Well, I'm sorry.
Let me ask you a question. I think we all went into this saying that there's going to have to be compromises made, right? What compromises are you willing to make?
It depends on what the options are. My general philosophy, and I think everyone knows this, is newer and fewer. We need fewer schools and they need to be newer. The more new construction as a percentage we have, the better.
Well, that's your opinion.
Yes, well, you asked my opinion.
But what's the compromise?
Well,
Let's say you see all the prices here. Okay, in my opinion, there's probably one that has a chance of passing, and that's going to need some compromise. What compromises would you make on these in order
Jeff,
to
I'd
get
rather
the
not,
thing passed?
in this meeting, let's not make this about me. Let's continue with our
No, but you're
conversation.
voicing your opinion on what should be done, and I'm saying, how bad is bad in order to
Right.
save money?
I
I'm not saying I disagree with you. I'm just saying I'm interested in what compromises we're
I
gonna
think
make.
that we can pass a higher referendum than what some other people think.
Well, that's what they thought on the first go
I
around.
understand, but there was a lot of other issues with the first
Do you
go
wanna risk that?
Yes,
Well,
that's what I want to do. But
Okay.
let's stop making this about me. I have a different
well, whenever you bring
threshold
up
for
that we
pay.
should do this, I'm gonna take it as your sole opinion, not as everybody's opinion.
I
Yeah.
I think everyone understands that.
I like where,
Can we get back on topic here?
Yes,
Yep.
please.
We're gonna fix, the community is going to figure out our compromise, basically what's
Right.
gonna happen. But I think what we wanna look at is, in terms of like air conditioning, maybe the next logical way to look at this is, do we air condition all the buildings? Or are there buildings in these mixes that we can say, we do not see staying the way they are in 5 or 10 years? And therefore, do we really want to invest several millions of dollars doing an HVAC air conditioning solution? Maybe some of these buildings, you could put window units in the upper floor, or, do something more of a mitigated level to reduce that HVAC.
Yep.
I think that depends on the model. If you've got a 10 building model, then that is definitely worth thinking about. But if you've got an 8 building model, the odds are pretty good you're going to have 8 buildings for at least the next 20 years, I think.
I think so too.
Okay,
I also think
then let's,
that if you say we're not air conditioning these buildings because they're going to be on the chopping block in the next 5 to 10 years, you're hurting property values. People aren't going to want to move to that area. I mean, I just don't see doing it that way.
I think we should plan for something that we expect to be in existence for at least the next 20 years, and ideally longer than that. I don't really want to go for a plan where we think, oh, we might close this building in 5 years if the population goes way down. We should assume, for example, I think that we're probably going to stay with 19 sections. Conceivably, could it go to 18 if the population goes down enough? Yes, but that probably doesn't drive a whole building being closed. So, and we're very unlikely to go to 17.
Well, what is the impact of going to 18?
6 classrooms or 8 classrooms. But
What's
I
that
don't
worth?
see.
what
It
about,
depends on how it lays out with the different options. So some of them you could
You
get
know,
rid of
this
in
may
addition.
not be 2 big items. This may be the sum of a lot of smaller items.
Understood.
So what is 6 classrooms? I mean, ballpark number.
You're about 5,000
What
square
were we saying? Yeah, it's 200. So for the direct cost for an addition, we're using $280 a square foot. That's the direct, but then when we go through all the rest, you can get up to, it's around 400 and
Are you talking about in a new construction?
yes.
What would it be what would be the impact in a remodel building to have 18?
Well, what you would do if you thought you're going to have 18 is you would reduce the new construction because that's
I mean, the
would think.
additions.
The additions.
Yes, okay.
So the addition value that he's talking about is the permanent
And
number.
let's say that the size of those classrooms are going to be the size, like we talked about last night, of the classrooms in the existing building that it's attached to, not the enlarged program that a new building would require.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to how Don or Nagel put together the different models. So if it turned out that we could say that it eliminates 2 of the additions, that could save significant money, but it depends on which model you're in too. So if we wanted to look at just the square footage alone,
A range.
what was the square footage that Don was using per classroom? Was it 800?
You're using 800, so figure 1,000 just to account for some hallway space and ancillary bathrooms you might have to add.
So you reduce 6,000 square
5
feet.
classrooms, you're covered 6,000 square foot.
So it's $2,400,000 at $400 a square foot.
Right. And you also have reduced staffing costs. But going from, I think that we have pretty strong buy-in from the board on 19 sections. And if right now, the 408 students in the first grade, 19 sections, that's 21.5.
The board is looking for recommendations.
I'm aware of this, but there's a lot of different issues. But right now, that's 21.5 students on average, and we know that we never exactly meet the average in every store, every district, because you can't reboundary every grade every year. So you're going to have a range of 20 to 23. Now, if we start talking about 18, that's going to go up by 1 to 1.5 students per classroom, and that's getting.
My reading of it was that the public wasn't that tight as you're stating it on the size of the classroom. If it was 20 or 19 or 21 or 22, it wasn't that critical a thing to the board or the public. That's my understanding of it.
Yeah, but the problem
It's
is,
very critical, Jeff. Very, very critical.
the problem is that it's
The board has
not,
to change their guidelines to accommodate going down to 18.
Yeah.
and it's not
Yeah, that's not gonna happen
21
because
students
on a
instead
survey-
of 20. In some schools, it might be 25 or
Right.
26, and 25 is an absolute breaking point for
Well, it
the
would
public.
require maybe some redistricting.
Well,
But you can't
that's going to happen
redistrict every
continuously.
year.
The problem is that you can't do it by grade. That's
Well,
the
again, I come back, we're looking for ideas to save money. Where are the compromises? It may be a series of smaller numbers.
I have an idea. Can I
Yes.
throw one out there? Okay. I'm so sorry, I forgot your name.
Dan.
Dan, thank you. I thought you said 2 meetings ago that we assumed in here, like reskinning and new floors and stuff like that in all of the existing spaces. Did I understand that
So
correctly?
the current estimate only includes flooring where the green report asks for it. But
Oh,
we did, because there's, components like, unit heaters that sit on the ground, we did incorporate some patching, like a patching allowance.
Okay.
So it doesn't include all new floors. Originally, in the baseline estimate, it did.
okay. Maybe that's the meeting I was thinking
Yeah.
of then. Okay. So is there any, beyond the stuff here at the bottom, the 5 things, elevators, lighting, blah, 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 is there any other, and the green report, is there any other assumed upgrades in above the line? Or is above the line
No.
really just, okay, so above the line is really just green report, HLS, plus additions?
Additions
the
and
above line stuff is gonna get
reconfigurations
into
to get the
really
code
laser
moving,
components
so-
of, well, we could push this air handler, out of find something in that building, take 1 or 2 of them and push them out, 4 or 5 years to the next cycle. Is where we have to get into that level of evaluation once we get there. And that's not the purpose of this group, to try to get into that level. It's more or less back to the ideas of how to, and if we want to propose the idea back to the community is class size, how critical it is, we can ask that question. I wouldn't get into whether that's 18 sections or 19 sections, what that means, but I would somehow try to frame that question around class size.
Mm-hmm.
To test that around the dollar amount.
Okay.
The only other thing that is in above the line is all the bathroom work, which half of it's associated with the with the
Kindergarten.
reconfiguration. Yeah, so kindergarten and EC both get bathrooms.
Okay.
What's the cost difference between reusing toilets and buying a new toilet? Like,
Between using a toilet and
we just use a lot of the access fixtures versus buying all this new stuff.
Reconfiguration group used to buy all the old toilets, put it in their home. And we did that before.
I mean, they're really like, a toilet is just a piece of porcelain. The inside you can swap out or whatever, but what is the price difference between if we were to say just reuse the existing stuff versus putting in new stuff?
Well, a new toilet costs about $200.
The purpose behind the bathrooms is more for ADA
That's
purposes.
what's behind the walls.
So yeah, and then, we did talk about, right now it's a complete gut. but there can be just a reconfiguration, which would, be a lot of patch. There might, if you have to reconfigure it, but, with the bathrooms associated with the kindergarten and early childhood, that is basically new bathrooms where you gotta cut in new plumbing in existing buildings. So that can't really go away.
Now, in the high school, we did, as part of the value engineering, like for example, we might only redo one wall where you've got all the piping and leave the other 3 walls the same. Is that true?
We actually really had no bathrooms. The bathrooms we went around the bathrooms and did pretty much nothing except for put sprinklers in them.
At the high school?
At the high school. So that's, I don't know how much that means in terms of money, but I think that
expensive, so
eventually what we're going to have to do as part of this process later on, not now, is actually get down to the bathroom level.
Yeah, no, we will be. But I think the point that we're capturing out of this is we're willing to sacrifice every bathroom being fully ADA, fully remodeled. We're willing to take a surgical look and we've got to do 1 full bathroom in every building or 2, whatever that ends up being, or half just of the plumbing side wall is done. We can ask that question that way to get a valuable number on it.
Yeah, I think a review.
Can I just get a clarification? Like, what does it mean to make up an ADA? Is it just making 1 stall ADA compliant, the doorways ADA compliant, and 1 sink ADA compliant?
Pretty much, but
the old plumbing. The old plumbing is not positioned right to accommodate that spacing. So you got to break out the old plumbing, reposition it to accommodate the spacing.
How do they do it at the high school?
The majority of the other stalls the same,
They
like if
didn't
it's a
fix
multi-stall
it for the
bathroom.
ADA?
only in new
If
buildings.
you have 4 stalls, you're going to disturb 2 or lose 1 to get the 1 ADA repositioned.
Okay.
And so depending on size of the building, if we lose 1, that may not be an issue, but if we start losing 1 per room, we may have had an issue with bathroom count. So that's just something we got to decide.
Well, I think what we've done is we've captured something here. We need to have that on our list of captures.
And the door is the other thing, is making a wider door to get into the bathroom itself. So
Right. Well, 42-inch wide wheelchairs are not the norm anyways for a young child. We're talking a 32 or 36. So the likelihood is that you're not necessarily going to need a wider door anyways. You just need to have the right handle on it and have to make sure it's easy to open. Because we're not, full ADA is a 42-inch wide wheelchair.
Well, your staff may at some point need ADA accessibility. So I wouldn't narrow it down to just what kids need. You have staff that may eventually have ADA issues that you have to accommodate for.
But can we narrow it down? Can we narrow it down in a way, and I don't know what your assumption is now, Dan, but like one ADA accessible per floor, or one ADA accessible per, I don't know, like a 500 square foot wing of a school or something?
Yeah, I mean, architecturally, I would ask Don if there's anything to it, but I think really where it comes down to meeting all the ADA, what we talked about last night was only if you're doing a certain percentage of the building,
Right.
cost-wise. I think it's probably more what everybody is more comfortable with. If you have an elevator and they can go up a floor to get to that ADA bathroom, is that acceptable to everybody? But it really comes down to everybody's perception, I would say.
Yeah, I think we've captured a potential important question here, and that we shouldn't try to answer it. But I think that clearly this is something worth looking at.
Does every school have a special education program, or is it only certain schools?
That's going to depend on how we end up configuring the schools and how many rooms are available.
Yeah.
Okay, let me ask a question. I've been a proponent for a long time that we should turn over a configuration to the education people and let them make these decisions. Why are we trying to reinterpret what's going to be best? It's going to change every time there's a new superintendent. It's going to change. We're not the experts on the education. I think it was a good idea to, if you say that every school doesn't need special education, what does the school say?
Well,
Have they ever been asked that question?
yes, they have.
And what did they say?
Well, it depended on how many rooms were available. And when we went with the first go around, they decided, well, there's going to be sale here and this there and everything based on the configuration that we decided. And they did the same thing for BDR3, and they'll do the same thing here.
I remember, I don't want to use names, but I think right after the referendum failed, the people at the cabinet said, we can make anything work. Okay, so we can't keep trying to reinterpret what we think is going to work. They're going to decide. If we're trying to look for compromises and spaces to save money, there's an idea. Maybe we don't put it in every school, and maybe they can live with that, and maybe that requires less bathroom work and other specialized equipment and so on. Why do you say no?
Jeff, it's also not just about the students, it's about staff, it's about parents, grandparents, about any visitors.
Well, the board has to decide those things. The board has to decide based on, they all right. I just keep coming back to, we have to find some areas to cut, in my opinion. I haven't heard many yet.
But I think that's what we're talking about though, Jeff. Yeah, we talked about the bathrooms are a perfect example. We've gone from a full remodel of all bathrooms to the ADA where we started at the baseline. And now we're talking about kind of surgically picking this bathroom in this wing or this bathroom on the floor or more expensive where those programs are petitioned. So we're talking about those kind of cuts. We're just trying to figure out how to ask the question and how we focus that laser on.
Well, like for example, eliminate elevator work. That's based on having handicapped elevators in probably all the schools or most of them.
Right.
So if you limited the schools that have special education, you have less elevator work, you have less toilet work,
Yeah.
renovation.
ADA is not just special education. ADA is for anybody who breaks their leg or their arm and can't
That's true.
pull open a door.
Or the
True.
mother of somebody, of a
That's
student.
a good point. That's true.
Yeah, it's not just the special education kids, it's anybody that walks into the school.
And staff.
Okay. It's not
So
required,
it's kind of like,
but it's nice to have.
not.
Julie,
Right.
We're being told it isn't
Other
required.
districts tend to have it. But what, I mean, think of it this way, I guess. If you look at Ravinia and it's got that center section that has all the levels,
Yeah.
what are the chances, like can the cabinet program that building so that they could avoid any ADA, people that need ADA having to go on to the second floor? And they do that already. So the special education that they put in that building is put on the first floor, and there is a bathroom available for those students to use. So you're right. At a certain point, we're just identifying that ADA we're willing to compromise. We don't need the fully loaded every building 100%. And now put it into the educators and the cabinet purview to decide, okay, how can we put the programming in this building so that we don't have to do every bathroom ADA? Does that make sense?
Yeah, but the example of the broken leg, I recall there was a situation, I believe it was at Ravinia, where literally classmates had to carry a student up the stairs. These are, so I understand that there may be, for example, in the first referendum at Ravinia, there was one room, literally, that was not going to be ADA accessible. because it was 1 foot up from the rest of the floor. And you might very well be even a little more liberal with that interpretation of how accessible everything had to be. So that's something we can look at, but I don't think it's a substantial amount of money that we can save necessarily. But clearly, there's no reason why you can't review it.
Okay, so far we've agreed that we can look at surgically cutting some of the AC, right? We can look at surgically cutting some of the bathrooms. Is there another area where we're looking at, we're willing to not have a fully loaded option? And I forgot the fixtures, that was an easy one. How about sprinklers? Do you need sprinklers in every aspect of the building?
That's a really good point. I don't, because
It's not required by code, we're told,
right.
right?
But typically with drawings or the way that it's designed is like the storage rooms, the electrical rooms, the mechanical rooms, those are all the ones that are more heavily rated, so they're more likely to have something in them that is going to catch on fire. So typically those rooms that are not classrooms are the ones that get more fire rated, which probably would need the sprinklers more than other rooms because there's more flammable items in them.
Like what?
Paper.
And
or electrical,
right?
mechanical equipment.
I looked at the fire, protection agency or whatever, and the chances of a fire in elementary school are very small because most of the fires either start in the kitchen.
The caller, Dan Struck,
They start in the kitchen
has
or
joined the
garbage
conference.
pail because the kids like fires. I've never seen that. There's no fatalities of any student in elementary school as far as I can find. Since it's invented smoke detectors in the 70s. And I don't know, I just don't think, I would cut the fire protection pretty much.
Or maybe-
personally. But maybe just a
Maybe
couple,
on,
like the boiler room or kitchen or something.
Mark, a little loud.
And one of the things to do sprinklers in just a few rooms gets very expensive because you have to bring in
Pipes
the
gotta go all the
water
way through
pipes,
anyway.
and then you gotta route it. Yeah, so if you're gonna go over to a certain area, it's not as much just to do a pipe here and there on the way. Like the mains getting there are a significant amount of cost.
I would put a fire protection pretty damn low, personally.
Well, you might not need a sprinkler, for example, in the gym.
Well, I don't think we need it anyway.
Well, my point is, we're talking about anywhere, we're talking about surgically identifying areas you might not need it. So in any of these subjects.
Why wouldn't you need it in the gym?
Why would you need it?
You have,
It's not a
you have
flammable space.
You have assembly uses, there are theater,
Uh-huh.
people coming for graduation, 500 people in the gym.
Right.
It's not just a gym class.
Right, but they're not doing arts and crafts. And,
No, but see,
no, good point. You make a good point, Jeff. Very good point.
I don't know. It's not the most expensive line item either. It's like
$5.50 is what per square foot. So I was just gonna add up. If we take the 700,000 square feet, that's almost $4 million.
Mm-hmm.
But again, if you do it later, it's going to
Way
be a lot
more.
more expensive than that. If you do it while the ceilings are down, it'll be more efficient.
So let me ask you a question. If you say eliminate new sprinklers at existing areas, so if you put additions on an existing building, does the addition have to be sprinkled? Or is
I
it
think
just if it's over 50%?
the addition has to be sprinkled
Yes.
no matter what.
The
per
addition
code.
would have to be.
Yes.
But the addition is only if I think it's 50% of the value of the building. So if you do more than that amount of work, then you have to meet the code.
So do you think we would need to sprinkler the additions if we decided not to sprinkler everything?
Sprinkler the additions?
Yeah.
Yes, that's, any addition you have to meet the code.
So that number,
Excuse me, Dan?
Yes.
Yep. I need to drop off for a minute. I'm kind of gonna try to get to my hotel and need to have my hands here for a minute and not have the phone. I can call back in about 15, 20 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
Where is it?
Where is it going?
let's come up with some good
The
ones.
caller has left the conference.
Okay, so
I have a question. Is anyone taking notes of what we're talking about?
Dan is.
I got some notes.
Okay.
Could we just think of, I'd like to pick Dan's brain about above the line issues. Again, the sum of a lot of things may add up. The additions, if we used smaller square foot, instead of 1,000 square foot that we were just saying before, for a 750 square foot classroom, let's say the classrooms were 650 and it was only 800 square feet gross. What kind of savings is that?
Well, the hallways are still going to have to be, what, 12
Well, that's
feet?
in the gross.
Yeah.
8 feet, I think it's, but yeah, I mean, it all depends on which model. So you can take, say, 400.
Well, just take one model, take model 2.
So you have a significant addition to Brayside. Model 2.
Two. We got total addition of 68,170 square feet. So we're saying we're reducing it by what, you want to use a percentage?
50 to by 5%.
200 square feet. You're reducing it.
Yeah, but it's about 5%.
So 200 square feet is what you, so that's times $400 a square foot is 80 grand.
80 grand.
You're saying 200 square feet for all, so 5% is that?
Well, Jeff, it's not 200 square feet per room, because the room is 800 is what they're doing. And you can bring it down
There
to
were some
750.
classrooms that were 650 and 700.
Not in the new stuff.
Not in the new stuff.
The new stuff is all 800
No, I'm saying in a remodeled building.
or remodeled.
And I'll make the argument for those that want to pick out new construction, that there's more of a major savings if you reduce the square footage rather than go with the new standards.
So in the plans, the renovations have, they're using the same size rooms in most configurations. So we're adding a wall here, demoing a wall in pretty minimal areas.
I'm not talking about changing the existing rooms,
But just the additions.
just in the additions.
So if we're reducing it,
As I understood Don yesterday, wherever there was new construction, he was using the modern standards, which are larger and larger than the rooms that you'd find in many of the existing buildings that are going to remain. My recollection was they were about averaging 700 square feet or so. So I'm
so I
saying
think
gross.
it's 800 square feet. So if I said we went to 700, that's 0.875, so square feet.
800 square feet was gross or net?
Net.
For a
It's
class.
net. That's net.
Yeah, but you're not going to significantly reduce the hallways. You're just going to reduce the size of the room.
Well, you take you're going to take the amount
I
of,
have an awful.
the length
I
of
have
the
an
corridor
awful
gets
question.
shorter.
Are we spending, it's Brian, are we spending any money outside the physical buildings, like with landscaping or remodeling fields or whatever?
There is, depending on which buildings it is, like whenever there's an addition, there's going to be sidewalks associated with that. But there are fields, like for instance, when Northwood and Wayne Thomas combined, there's fields associated with that, but there's not a ton
And a new
of-
parking lot, right? I
Yes.
think in that
We're,
one.
we're not like spending like $2 million in trees and bushes or anywhere, something like that, right?
No, it's nothing extravagant.
Though there will be buffer stuff. If you put a new parking lot in the pit, for example, the community there is going to want to have some pretty substantial landscaping around it. But we're not talking millions of dollars.
Where?
The pit up near Northwood, where they're going to put the parking lot.
By
Dan,
Northwood.
what is that?
I'm
big
curious as to
situation
what the
with
neighbors are gonna
discussions?
say about that.
Well, we know from Edgewood
Schools?
experience.
I think it depends on the school, you know, at the ones we're doing now, it's mostly flooring, which,
And containing that is done by just covering it over.
no, you pull it up.
Do you
completely.
pull it up?
Yeah. And it's usually the glue, which, you know, it's not like the fibrous material, so it's not, you know, it's not really dangerous unless you're eating it. So.
So what did you come up with on that question?
So if I reduced it, which is probably by if I took, you know, 13% out of it, which is probably too much because of the corridors and stuff, that came up to 3.4 million.
Okay.
So if you said maybe 2.5.
You're talking about, what was the term that was used? You wanna treat everybody equally, give them all the same size classroom.
Well, most of the classrooms are over 750. So reducing it to 700 will be less than the current average.
Some of them are,
Some are
650 too.
But most are over 750. And new construction we saw when we toured high schools, like in
The tour that I was on, everybody thought that the classroom size was fine.
I didn't. No, I didn't.
Oh, you
Yeah.
didn't? Okay, well,
when we toured high schools and we were looking at the high school project, the new classrooms were all 900 square feet. I'm by no stretch am I recommending that we go to 900, but that is actually a more typical size
in a
than
new building. Yeah.
in a new building.
Yeah,
than
no question.
Right, but we're not going to
Nobody's
change
arguing
the
that.
existing rooms. We're only talking about new construction right now, and the number I believe that we have is 800, which
No,
I
what
think,
we're talking about is saving money. That's what we're talking about. This
yes,
whole exercise is to save
I
money.
understand, but but they're 800 square foot, which is not excessive, and almost all are over 750. So the new building would have smaller rooms than most of the existing buildings.
What did you figure, do you know what size the classrooms are in an existing building?
I don't.
Take one with anyone,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have the
Red Oak.
data on each.
not Red Oak, Sherwood. say.
Sherwood has nice sized rooms, I thought.
They have what?
Sherwoods are pretty
They
big.
have, Sherwood is one of the
It was actually
bigger.
Northwood that has the smallest.
Which one?
Northwood has the smallest classrooms.
What are those?
In Red Oak,
And Brayside, some of the Brayside classrooms are pretty small. Well, Northwood was with many of the 650s.
okay, that's what you're looking for.
So what does it say?
It shows number of rooms over 750 square foot is one line, and then there's another line that shows 650 to 750.
Okay.
So you see that in most of the buildings, the rooms are greater than 750.
Yeah, so actually, Ravinia and Red Oak for elementary schools, I guess I was wrong.
And two
Are the only
pages
ones
later
that
is
have
the
650 to 750.
middle schools.
And then
Okay, so let's say it's 750. What did you figure? 800?
I believe that's what
Nickel Archer used
included,
800.
was 800 for a standard classroom.
Okay, I had the impression that
That was great the way.
he said in the new construction
Very-
that he used modern program
Yeah, I can
standards,
find
which were
out.
bigger than,
He,
um,
I think anytime they built a kindergarten classroom, it included it was 1,000 square feet, which is the standard for kindergarten.
yeah.
Right.
But I think he was saying, you weren't there last night, but that was the first thing that came up. The question was, if you build a new school, it had to be more square feet, and the main reason was that the new standards suggest greater size classrooms. And if somebody's looking to save money, they don't have to build them that big. They can build them smaller, similar to what we have. And if they're a little tight, you put fewer students in.
Well, we certainly could go back down to 750, but I don't think it's a significant savings. But the code requires the width of the hallways, for example.
Yeah.
So a new construction, I'm assuming that what we're assuming is code.
Your corridor would be shorter.
Not significantly.
No, but he's working on a square foot basis. If you make all of the classrooms smaller in a new building,
Right.
you're going to have less square feet. Remember that what we talked about yesterday, why was the construction cost of the new building and the one in the old referendum unaffordable? Because it was too big.
So I think, I don't know how it works, but I would assume you can't,
I think
go ahead, Julie.
we can summarize this right now and just say that
The caller has joined the conference.
It's John back.
Jeff is proposing that we look at the possibility of reducing square footage in addition, right?
But if we're talking
And then-
about 50, Dan, if we're talking about 50 square feet reduction per classroom, for say, whatever, $300 per square foot, more, approximately, that's like $1,500 a classroom.
What do we?
Right, it's not that much.
What did you use to come up with 3.5 million?
I used 400, so that's like the fully loaded number. So,
So-
it starts at 260 to 280 per edition. But that's the construction cost.
I guess I'm just
Well, it's 15,000, but
Still.
yeah.
I'm just trying to move on to another aspect of this.
Okay.
Yes.
Like the other thing that we touched on last night was, do we really care about administration? You know, can we feel
Careful, Julie, I'm back on the phone.
John, I think we can move your trailer anywhere. You're portable.
But I think, John was saying that like 33,000 square feet is being, accounted for administration, and that we could actually outsource like storage and really kind of hunker down that square footage footprint just on just office space. So I think
Well, Julie, even more so, is it possible to reduce some of the sizes of like offices and workrooms and conference rooms within the schools themselves?
yeah, but we'll stick them all in cubicles, right? Yeah.
I mean, whatever. I mean, even,
Yeah.
they're like special ed, some of the schools have, like special ed offices, but, combine them with somebody else, as
Right.
teachers.
Well, if
There's all kinds of sufficiencies and, doubling up that can be done in those areas, I would think.
And I think we would have a community that would support that, since we have a lot of local people out there saying, cut administration. And I'm not.
That's Carl.
Well, John, I'm just trying to.
I'm in a trailer already.
if we look at our packages, I don't know who has our package with them, but if we look at the one that we wrote IT on, and look about page 6, there's a listing of the square footage that administration needs. And on this, it suggests the total is 16,700 feet. I'm wondering how we got 33.
That's what storage is.
Yeah, the storage, the warehousing, the receiving space is what makes up all that record. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be a place you could store that stuff. The Park District has extra space. I mean, there's places that we can,
Oh, no, there is.
we
talk
should,
about going digital with this stuff too. We have to keep a certain percentage of it, like hard copy by law, we have to. But we can definitely start digitizing a bunch of this stuff too. It's reducing that.
right, and businesses hired what Iron Mountain was the company, and we used to just ship off cases of stuff there, and then after 7 years, we had them throw it away.
Yeah, the only thing is with student record, there's so much that we have to keep for 50 years. That's the problem with that stuff.
Right.
But that's not a lot. A lot of it is that 7-year stuff that you're talking about, that we could start digitizing and not have to move about that.
Yeah. So I talked to District 109, and they have 3,000 students compared to our 4,000 students, and their administrative space is about 7,000 or 8,000 square feet total. So I think that administrative space and where some of this might go is certainly an area that we need to review thoroughly.
I mean, your boardroom's about 2,000 square foot. That usually could be a large conference room in one of the schools that hold there, not specifically just a boardroom. Yeah,
Is your maps real quick?
that multi-purpose space used to become kind of the whole point.
Yeah, so
Right, and I think that would be like my number one cut.
yeah, so
Sorry, but
I think a really good review of administration is definitely on our list of things that need to be looked at. And virtually none of it should go into new space.
I would agree with that. The heart of it should not be new construction for that.
Yeah, if you're going to do new construction, use it for classrooms. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well,
So
I think you find almost every administrator agreeing with that.
So Ira just walked in, by the way. So
Hi, John.
Dan, is that like practical feedback? Is there a way that you can see to fit administration or even split it? Is there any extra capacity in some of the buildings?
So that was my first question to Don, and as far as, is there capacity where there is, some room to move people around? And he actually said it all is, it's pretty full. But if you're saying, let's cut some of these internal school offices that you may be able to cut to fit admin, that's, it's more of an operational thing for the schools too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's looking at different options. There's probably flexibility. But
Yeah, if you use
have
lunch-
to really dig into the details.
if you use a lunchroom or a gym as your sport boardroom, for example.
Right, like I don't think we need to build a new
The only
board.
place I would advocate for anything from the admin side is by the more you separate us, the less efficiency we lose with all of our assistants and secretaries and aides that we utilize amongst us.
And staff is our big cost.
Yeah, the staffing part is where we lose any chance to gain from our side, sharing those resources.
That makes sense.
I know that some
taken.
Yeah, it wouldn't necessarily separate you. I would just try and reduce your required square footage, and then.
Yeah, no, I was just representing the idea of, filling in the pockets where we may have a classroom here or there to use. It just breaks down the operations efficiency of our side, which has a dollar value. It's not huge, but there is a dollar value to it.
I buy that totally. So let's talk about this from the perspective of administration stuff, thinking in terms of where people are located as distinct from where things are located. And treat those as two separate entities and then approach it from that perspective.
Yep. Very well
Makes
put.
sense.
The other thing I was going to say is some school districts that we work with, rent office space. So I don't know if that's an option. That let's not do it. They don't fit, but there's an office building down here that you can rent space.
Well, the running joke is the second floor of the Saks building, which is definitely open.
Yep.
Yeah,
What's
there's a lot
going on
of.
on the
And-
first floor?
Well, we don't
excess
know, but there's
space.
24,000 square feet on the second floor that is currently empty.
Well, we'll just have them all telecommute. Then we don't have to worry about it, right?
It'll cover file storage as well.
Hey, I'll work from home.
All right.
That helps. I'll work from home.
Thank you.
All right. So we hit the administrative space. Is there any other kind of? Ira had an idea last night. Is Ira there now?
Yeah, I'm here
He's
too.
here. I tried this
So
before.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. Oh,
Why don't you kind of talk about your idea about the staging of construction and using buildings that are slated to close? And
Sure.
I
I had mentioned this to John. If we if we're using a configuration that closes schools, we can move kids into a closed school on a temporary basis,
Right.
so that the school under reconstruction can be basically worked on a full-time basis.
More
Maybe
efficient.
instead of 4 summers, you get it done in a year, and then somebody else moves into that school, the kids move back. So maybe you save some on staging costs, escalations, but also there might be some, just better bids we can get if you're allowing people to work continuously instead of having them off and on and off and on.
I think we should make a recommendation as part of our proposal to the board that if we are going to close buildings, that all of those buildings be retained by the district until we absolutely sure we don't need them anymore. To Ira's point. I mean, if we can move people around, so selling a building prior to absolutely knowing you don't need it is just got to be off the table.
I think that was their intent. That's what they said in the first round.
So let's have that as part of our recommendation.
So what is okay, so how do you decide when you actually don't need it anymore?
Yep.
Is it once all the construction is
I
done?
would say at least post-construction, at least post.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that might be
I'm
plenty of
pulling
time.
out
That'd be 4 years.
You're gonna have to define, right, you're just gonna have to define that moment of when you don't need it anymore. Otherwise, that'll be left up to interpretation that will change.
Well, that's really going to be driven by the administration and the construction team.
But I think saying once all construction is done, that's a good defining moment of when you don't need it anymore, right?
Do you have any rough idea what the schedule, if it was shortened up, could yield in savings?
Well,
We can reduce the escalation is the easy one to say that's how we can pull it back, whether that's, a couple percent. That adds up pretty quickly, but also looking at if we can do more at once, that also saves on our staff. We don't need, staffing as much. It's more efficient for us. So the Gilbane's staffing costs would be cheaper too.
right. Well, the good example, of course, is Green Bay. There's absolutely no reason you would move early childhood and the administration group out until the new space is available.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And the point of we could theoretically get money for selling these properties, and that is true, but I don't think that we're going to have a significant difference in our ability to sell it for a good amount by delaying the sale of a property for a couple of years. I just don't think it's going to be significant. The one difference might be if we had a buyer for a specific property that wanted it sooner rather than later, then we would have to have a discussion about that. For the example of a number of people have mentioned that the Ravinia Festival might be interested in buying Braeside. So if that is something that was on their agenda and they wanted to do it sooner rather than later, that brings up the conversation. But that's, not something we need to deal with at this point.
So all that is scaled against our escalation costs and other effects, I'm making that investment with them, so.
And are you suggesting that the money from the sale of the land goes to reduce the cost of this?
It's not
Well, it
that
goes
much
to the
money.
district coffers. How we pay for it is a different question.
It wouldn't really affect this, except for the operation. They'd have more cash in hand for operations.
Yeah.
Which that can happen day two, it doesn't have to happen day one.
How to finance this and how much of it is a referendum and how much of it is going to be coming out of operating funds and what other sources of operating funds and capital funds might be available is a little bit above our pay grade. The thing that we are providing is some community input on how big a referendum that is viable, and that's based on the surveys and the focus groups and this kind of stuff.
Is that true?
The district is going to really be focusing on exactly how all this funding is going to happen.
I thought that I thought that the referendum has to cover all the costs, that none of it is coming out of the,
We don't know that.
I
No one
thought
knows
that
for
was
sure.
tried in the first go-around and they found out that the money wasn't there or something. You would know more about
I
that.
heard last night that some of the funds in excess of the reserve that the district wants to keep are going to be put to use this summer for repairs. And so anything that the district might be able to kick in would be sort of gravy, but don't count on significant dollars.
Well, yeah, the point is that that's not in our purview. Let's let the district figure out if they want to kick in some money or how that might happen. We have no idea if it could happen. That's going to be their issue.
So for our purposes now,
Yeah, you guys
determining
set the bar for
what the
Yeah, we're
tax
not.
rate impact is going to be on the taxpayer, we should figure that it's the cost and the school district, if they are going to contribute any funds, is not going to reduce the cost of the.
Well, we don't know that for sure. They might try to do that, but
Well,
I
we
don't
have to
think.
know that
But I
before
don't
we
think
go
we're.
out, right?
But I don't think before we go out, certainly. But I don't think. Well, we can't include expected revenue from selling a property, for example.
I mean, a
That's
sale of
my point.
property might ultimately
No.
cover some debt service or something later.
We're talking for 2 weeks from now. For 2 weeks from now, what can we ask and what can we cut? Stuff we're gonna talk about, stuff that's gonna happen over the summer, where we're gonna do our cost run with administration and Chris and try to develop what can we contribute. But you guys set the bar at 150, we can contribute 25, and I ask you 125. That'll be all set up over the summer, not now.
Right.
One thing to consider though is as you're kind of looking at these line items, the line item 2, like everything that's in the renovation green report, which is like 25 to 35 million, that's not like a cost that needs to be incurred today. So that is sort of naturally over the next 8 years or so.
Well, the project's going to be 4 years.
Yeah,
Now,
that project will be for you.
but where that does apply in the staging, for example, Oak Terrace probably doesn't need its new compressors and new air HVAC equipment
Right.
until certainly the end of the process. So
Yep.
when we talk about staging, you would stage Oak Terrace at the end. And maybe even a couple years beyond, based on you wait until the equipment is required.
If
Right.
it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, exactly. And well, you might fix something that's not broken if you're already doing a whole bunch of stuff in that area. But certainly, if it's like again specifically Oak Terrace, if we're fine, you would wait and do the work at the point you need to.
Right.
Now
They
you
were
might
talking
still
about having $1 million
You
for
might-
Oak Terrace, that's it.
you might still put it within the referendum money, but that would be a decision that the district would make as to whether or not you would still take the $10 million or whatever that total amount is, whether you include that in the referendum or not, I don't know. But clearly in the staging process, if it ain't broke, we're not going to do it first.
No, just for everybody's kind of perspective on this, because Oak Terrace is a, quote, newer building within the last 20 years, we've been maintaining that building as it should have been maintained. We've been doing some significant repairs and maintenance work along the way, so the building can sustain itself longer. So that building, it may have a life cycle of, let's call it 25 years on compressors. I perceive we should be able to get 30 out of this. Because of the type of maintenance we've been doing there, is we don't have building to stay. Every other building is not been doing that level of repair, because of all the uncertainty.
So let's put on the list a review of Oak Terrace's needs and when that might, or I don't know, specific, I guess, a different concept of when we might do that work, and leave open the question on how much of that should be included as part of the referendum. I don't know the answers to those things, but let's put that on a list of things you need to think about.
So one of the items that we had put out there before is just leaving the green report items, because that's really the mechanical components.
Right, but even that is until it's you think it's going to break in the next year that you're going to actually replace those mechanicals.
And the other way to think about it is only move walls for the programming needs, and then, you know, the district kind of uses those operating funds for any repairs that need to be done over the years.
Right, though it would be kind of good if we had some sort of specified, like in District 113, they put $5 million a year aside for capital. Now, are we going to get to $5 million a year for capital? No, not by no one's imagination is that going to happen. But we need to start to think about, if we know that with the green report and the equivalent of the green report that is going to be generated for the future, similar to the work Perkins and Will has just done for $2 million at the high schools to identify every expense you think they might have for the next 10 or 15 years and document it, put it in their maintenance management program. You know, we need to start to think about how we are going to fund that over time, that continuing work, rather than, oops, a compressor broke, now what do we do? That's a level of specificity.
Are there, so I haven't spent a ton of time looking at this and thinking, like, are there easy configuration or sectioning assumptions that we could have made differently? I don't know if anyone else has looked at that, but did you see anything that was like obvious when you were putting it together?
That's more of a Nagel question.
Okay.
They're the ones who put it all together, so I can't really answer that. But again, I did ask Don the same, similar question. Was there obvious things, and he didn't see that there were. We're also looking at, can we put together a grouping of schools that meet certain requirements, where you could take all these schools and pick certain ones to meet the requirements. Again, you might not be looking at the location, but
right,
where all these fit, and you can kind of pick and choose them to fit into that. We haven't talked about it as a group with Nagel, but Bill Bain was talking about if that is an option. Maybe that would help you guys to see if there is a better one that fits, and it's less expensive.
And just so you know, Megan Cabinet's going to be spending next Thursday going through all the, kind of taking that look at it through from a departmental perspective. We're going to be going through it for all day Thursday. We're doing an operational evaluation of all these to see if there's things we can capture or point out or say about any of the models.
okay.
And guys, I'm going to have to drop off again. I apologize because I have to carry something on my end. This is been recorded. It'll get put up. The web when we get all the cuts for that. When Steve gets it done. And we'll capture all the questions. So whatever I will listen to again to capture all the questions. And please send me anything you can by email, and I'll be tabulating everything. I'll get out to you by Saturday.
Cool.
Okay. Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Have a good night, John.
You guys keep working if you want to.
We have to stay till midnight, but you leave. Okay, bye.
I hate to mention that I have to go to the airport fairly soon.
So are there any other major ones that we need to talk
Has left the
about?
conference.
Any other major issues that we should bring up at this point, that we should put on our list of things to look at?
Are the NPRs open for, we talked about gyms and HVAC and, that was
Yeah,
what people-
I actually was thinking about that when we moved on. Like, I mean, it seems like it's a gym is a huge space. It seems like quite expensive to air condition a gym.
Well, as I said, that was my opinion. I do think we should, but clearly that can be looked at.
Right. I mean, I would assume today they probably go do outside sports, when it's
Well, what was
not
the
an
comment?
appropriate
Was
temperature.
it Rory who was talking last night about this. You
Yeah.
missed her conversation about when you've got a hot day in that gym. And again, this is a room that gets very hot. The students coming back, basically, you lose the next 2 hours in terms of them being able to function.
And we've heard about the downside of not air conditioning a gym when we toured ASEA.
They did not air condition it?
The only place they didn't air condition was the gym. And I can tell you, I've heard from multiple people that they think that was just the worst idea possible.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's a terrible idea.
I mean, even in the high school, they didn't air condition the cafeteria yet at Highland
really?
Park. So there's still work to be done at the high school.
Is it an interior space where everything else around it kind of keeps it cool?
No, it's hot.
Is it? Is it? No wonder my kids say no one's ever in there.
But the good news is that they got $5 million a year for capital spending. So they can actually address that.
Is that one of those things that are sort of penny wise and dollar foolish? You know,
They're doing, well, so the thing with the gym or the cafeteria is it's probably got its own air handling unit, so you can do it as a standalone project.
Okay.
So, you know, if you cut that out, you're putting one rooftop unit on and it's feeding all the ductwork that's already there. So it's easier to do standalone, and the cafeteria at Highland Park, I think, just needs a lot of work. It's not just HVAC. So.
And needs a new kitchen, needs everything.
Yeah. Okay. I've got a question on, unless, I don't
Go
know
for
if
it.
we're in a specific spot. The elimination of elevator work, is that the type of elevator that a handicapped kid is going to be unable to get to his or her classroom?
Yes.
It is, okay. Sounds like a good idea. Isn't that ADA? I mean,
So,
Yes.
almost,
yeah, I mean, the discussion last night was if you don't need to meet ADA, if you don't
Right,
spend so much
okay,
money.
but
So
that
it's
would
not a
otherwise-
requirement.
gotcha, but it's probably the right thing to do.
Right.
Okay.
Well, is it possible to be surgical with the elevator? You know, say like at a break side where the second floor is just an INC. You know, don't put an elevator there.
Yeah, I think.
There are 2 classrooms on the second floor. Are they not in use? I don't know the answer to that, but there are classrooms on the second floor. My children went to them.
I didn't look, is it more than one building?
Well, I was, you know, so if you're just skipping one floor and you're doing, you know, you have to put the elevator in
Brian, I
anywhere.
need to head out, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
I wasn't in on some of the discussions over the winter, but in all the configurations that were looked at, was it ever questioned about, instead of putting kindergarten in each building, having a separate kindergarten building?
Yeah, we did.
Community's very much against
And
that.
it turned out to be pretty expensive.
You did?
Because these have to be large rooms, all the bathrooms. You're pretty much talking new construction.
Right.
And then maintenance, busing is a problem
Yeah,
across
so-
the district.
And the community
With what?
didn't.
Yeah, so they
Busing all the way, you know, across the district.
So there's a whole list of reasons why.
And what about, and the same question about the dual language things, wasn't there like an academy approach versus?
Yeah, well, some of the configurations call for dual language academies, but the cost differentiation between doing that or not doing it turns out is not significant. So it's not a cost factor. So if we change whether it's dual language academies or not, didn't impact the costs. So,
Well, these
Facility costs, but operational
capital,
costs.
does it affect?
wait, sorry,
Sorry,
Julie?
Julie.
Go ahead.
Facility costs doesn't change, but operational costs, it can have significant impact on how you put dual language in the building.
Staffing.
Right.
That's
And
what I was
it may or may
thinking.
not
Right.
have
So-
educational benefit.
Yeah, and that's going to be much more important at K-5 than it will be at the middle schools, because in middle schools
You have people that want dual language at both middle schools, and operationally, that is extremely expensive.
Well, that's what Jennifer said, and we don't know for sure if that's how much more expensive. She made a comment, and we all love her and we all respect everything she says, and I'm certainly one of those people. But I think that's not an absolute requirement that we have all the dual language in one middle school. I'm not sure that the incremental cost is that great. That being said, most of our models all call for the dual language in one middle school. And I don't have a problem with reviewing splitting it, but it doesn't fit with the models that we're talking about.
Well, the other thing is that, as Jennifer explained it, which made perfect sense to me, it is next to impossible to find dual language administrators. And if you've got dual language at 2 schools, you double the need for administrators.
Yeah.
Lose a lot of efficiencies with limited staff.
Right, but because you're talking about almost the whole staff having to be bilingual at a dual language academy, if you split those,
the administrators.
then but even
But it's the
the
administrators
That's
that are
what-
doubling.
yeah, so K-5 is much more significant, but it is still significant at the middle schools.
It's significant everywhere if you really play it out. And
Okay.
we'll let the cabinet do that. So,
Did I hear,
all right, is this a stopping point for
I think
everybody? Or?
Alex asked a question last night about, are there bubble rooms in
Yep.
all the schools?
Yep.
Is that what we have?
Yeah, the bubble rooms are the situation where you have one grade level, say 3rd grade, not the other grades, just the 3rd grade has a lot of extra students, and you have to split that up into 4 sections instead of 3. That's what a bubble room is for.
Are you talking about in all the buildings?
Yeah, in all the buildings that could happen at 1 or 2 grade levels, and if you don't have bubble rooms, then you would either have a very large classrooms because you weren't able to split them up, or you'd end up trying to redistrict at the grade level, which is not viable. So having a couple of bubble classrooms is operationally important.
Well, I remember in the last referendum, the middle school, there were the pods with extra space for gatherings outside, in addition to the classrooms.
Yes.
Were those called bubble rooms?
No.
I don't.
Have we still got those?
No.
We're not doing that.
No.
So bubble rooms,
Double rooms are classrooms that are extra in case you go over the limit.
okay, now in a
And bubble rooms
declining,
are more
in a
in
declining
elementary school.
trend for students, why are we building bubble rooms?
I think
We're not necessarily building bubble
We
rooms
have bubble.
per se, but
Huh? Go ahead.
I think
Go
the
ahead,
point
Dawn.
is that I think the point is that even if the population's declining, it can still be variable in any given place. So
That's the answer I got last night.
Yeah.
okay.
Which is that it's already been, the population statistics have already been taken into the sectioning that you mentioned and, for bubble rooms. And even if you eliminated some of the bubble rooms, it wouldn't necessarily alter
Say
your,
money. It wouldn't say money.
you wouldn't necessarily be able to close another school or something like that or alter the
Could it make
construction.
additions smaller?
Yeah, it's a driver of space. Yes.
So that's a
But I
question.
still think it actually becomes even more important as we go down to 19 sections to have bubble rooms because we're more likely to pop sections given that we're bringing all of the average class size up to the maximum.
And maybe the question of the community is if having some bubble rooms within the schools costs a little bit more to ensure we have them, but it might reduce the need for a
Boundary
rebounding.
changes,
Is that a value? Is that something the community would like to see? And my bet is people hate rebounding more than anything. So, if those classrooms are valuable for boundaries,
Yeah, and they use them. It's not like they just leave them empty. So, you know, if they're there, they use the space.
For what?
Whatever they need it for. No, it'll be
No.
probably conference rooms, small
Misbehaving
meeting
kids
rooms,
go in there.
you know, that kind of stuff. You know, pillow fights.
And again, it's more in the elementary schools that you're talking about, the bubble rooms, because the class stays in that room the whole day. Whereas at the middle school level, they're moving around and they can be more efficient with the use of the classroom space. But the elementary schools really need that bubble room, half for that, like, spike in one grade level of students.
In the schemes that Don did that show new middle schools, are there pods in those?
Not really.
So it's not like the old.
No, it's not like the
not
old.
like the old one.
It's not like the old one.
Just brainstorming.
Yeah, no.
But we're also not putting in auditoriums. You know, we keep leaving the one at Edgewood, but we're not going to build a new auditorium at Northwood, or even if we have a new middle school. So that's another reduction from the original proposal.
I'm not happy about that.
I'm not either, but something's got to give.
We've vetoed an awful lot of things. We voted compromise.
Oh well.
I really haven't studied the drawings. I know at some of the schools that had one gym, were there some elementary schools that had one gym and we were going to add another one? Or
That's
isn't
true.
it-
So at Indian Trail, what is the old gym thingy? Is that being repurposed in, or is that the cafeteria? No, that's not.
Their cafeteria is in the basement at Indian Trail.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So are we using
So
that?
one of the options, the gym goes away completely because there's a new addition to tie in the Elm Place. But
Yeah,
that's one of the options. But
one
I
of the
don't think
options.
any of the old gyms are being. Besides that,
It's
at
the-
Wayne Thomas, there's a gym that gets split in half because
Yeah.
it's being used for early childhood. But most of the gyms stay where they are on the plans. But again, they all are a little, every model's a little different. So
Right.
We're not adding gyms.
no, not except for
Well, if you put a new building up, you're putting a gym in.
building, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But to the existing one, we're not adding gyms.
No.
Did we suggest to get rid of the walkway in the funky Northwood Wayne Thomas?
That's I could add that to the list. It's just
Well-
that way the kids would have to walk outside if they're going between buildings.
If you're going to use Wayne Thomas for middle school, I think you probably need to have a walkway. But one of the things that concerns me is if you're going to build a walkway for $1 million, I think that's the amount that walkway costs. I at least want to hang some classrooms on one side of it, or something that's useful to make that more valuable. It doesn't have to be two-story, because one of the things we discussed was a two-story connection between the two buildings. Even if you put a one-story connection and get some added value of some sort of usable space along that walkway, having a beautiful glass walkway strikes me as
Didn't that come
not
up
something
in
I'm
one of our
excited about.
meetings Where if you added classes on I call it the right side, I think that might be
The west side.
East?
East?
I thought east, which is away from the street, that you were gonna end up covering the windows in some of the existing classrooms. If you think about it as like a barbell, certain classrooms on the edge of the barbell windows that would otherwise be.
But we don't need space there, right? But there's no additions in that model.
Depends on the configuration.
Yeah, I think
Okay,
the
I
one,
thought- I didn't
the
realize
one
there was
that
a
just,
walkway
the
in
one
one
that
corner.
just has the walkway, yeah, you don't need more classroom space to make.
We could add an auditorium.
Yeah, for example, this one has 14,000 square foot of additional.
Oh, does it?
classrooms.
Okay.
And if I'm gonna put in 14,000 square foot of additional classrooms, I want
There's the
to
walkway
just
side.
stretch that towards Wayne Thomas and connect the two buildings, because why not?
Because there is
Where's
one
the
just a walk.
glass walkway you're talking about?
And this one doesn't have it.
That's in, it's Northwood 4, Wayne Thomas 4. So
Right.
it's this one if you want to look at.
Yeah, so
Yeah. And there's no addition.
So I would want to use that space.
This.
If I'm going to build something, I want to build something that also adds some value other than just a place to walk for $1
I don't
million.
think that's necessarily true. It's something to look at. There's plenty of places.
Well, all
that
these
just
things
have
are
a
something
glass
we
light.
look at. But if for example, that model where you're talking about adding 14,000 square foot of classrooms, I would rejigger it so it connected to the two buildings too, because why not?
Well, they are separate. This one's not. This one's just Wayne Thomas.
I understand they're separate, but I would still probably connect them, because then you can share space where necessary. So, for example, fifth graders might be able to go over into the Northwood area to have access to STEM facilities. So there's added value to connecting the two buildings, in my view. If as long as you're building something anyways.
Which is the added, which is the, other than the connection, which is the new construction?
All your stuff is ended up on this side.
That's it. Oh,
Thanks.
that's it. So would we be building unnecessary space?
Yeah.
I mean, you're right, it's logical from a geographic perspective to put classes there, but I think we're just adding construction costs where there may not be any need for more space.
Well, if we don't need the space, we don't need the space. But if we need the space, we should make it,
Yeah.
use it, do it
Because
efficiently.
there is no other new construction other than the connector.
Well,
So like if you look at
Northwood
3,
1.
Northwood 3 and Wayne Thomas 3, it's kind of the same thing, only you're adding classrooms because you need the space on that one. So Northwood 3, Wayne Thomas 3.
Yeah, that one.
It does have classrooms on it.
Yes.
It's the same concept. And there's another one that has an addition basically where those
Yeah, you're
trailers
right,
are.
Rick. That Northwood 3 has other classrooms on it for.
and Northwood 1 has classrooms
Yeah.
that are sort of attached in the building.
Yeah, same thing.
So I'm not trying to change all these designs and figure out how much
Yeah,
to
if you were going to take Northwood 1 to connect it to Wayne Thomas would be fairly simple because it's right there anyway.
You just angle it.
I'm just curious, I know this is probably a question for John, who wasn't on the phone, but I remember the problem with the first referendum about the park and the counting on getting that to work, to get the middle school to work, and it didn't pan out.
Which part?
In the first referendum, West Ridge Park.
Oh,
So it
I think-
actually did pan out. That was not true that it didn't pan out. The
What do you
district
mean?
was going to be willing to give the space.
They what?
They were willing to give the space.
Not my understanding.
I understand, but the facts were they were.
My understanding was we didn't get it, and in this go-around, we weren't gonna count on properties that were in limbo as to whether we would get or not. So my question is, in the new parking area at Northwood, that we're counting on to be essentially a parking structure.
Yeah, we own that.
Instead of I know we own that, but we're taking a grass area that the residents front on
Right.
and making a structure there.
I think it's just
And
like
I wonder if anybody has consulted with the city as to whether that's going to be a problem.
The answer to the question is the city knows about it, and there's already people who live in that area who are raising questions.
Yes.
That is already happening, but that's totally expected. It's similar to the kind of conversation that's happening in Northwood.
That was the same argument that was made with the park. All I'm saying is, just like with Edgewood School getting
The ring road.
Are we, with these plans, is it still going to require is it only gonna be a ring road that's required, or is it gonna require another access point to one of the roads to the north or
At
the
Northwood?
south?
No,
Oh,
it's-
at Edgewood.
At Edgewood, no. The plan for the ring road is good for current, where we are now and any of the options we're looking at.
That's been approved, or is it still?
It's gonna be built this summer. They've already started working on it.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, the ring road's happening.
It's happening.
okay, good.
Sorry, where's the parking structure?
Pardon?
Where's the parking structure?
There is no parking structure.
Isn't it, I think it's just like a,
I'm saying
just
in Northwood.
elevated deck for flood control.
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
You have to put
Yeah, that's
storm
what I
detention
remember.
underneath the
Yeah.
parking
But
lot.
the point is, I was on the plan commission for 10 years. I know what people object to, and sometimes they're successful.
Yes.
I'm saying, looking out on a grass field is different than looking out on a paved grade structure. It's sort of like at Target's parking lot.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just how
Well,
it is.
we're very familiar with that because of the issues that have happened at Highland Park High School. So this is a movie we've seen before, and it'll be contentious. It's going to be a big conversation, and legally the district can do it. But what they're going to do is they're going to be extremely careful about. I know this from talking to John about landscaping is going to be just freaking whatever the community wants. The community's going to get as far as landscaping, and lighting is all going to be that pointing down stuff, so it doesn't have a big bright thing. You know, all of the buttons.
So you're saying
They
it's been
need-
approved?
No, in Northwood.
Yeah.
No, but this is what will certainly
Your
happen.
opinion is it's going to get approved? Or has it gone far enough with the city?
No,
and
the
the
city has
zone-
not
and the
been
zoning?
officially talked about it.
Okay, well,
The
that's what
city
I'm
knows
saying.
about it, but legally they can put stuff there.
I'm not so
because-
sure about that.
Okay. Well,
Zoning comes into play.
I understand. But
And isn't it's probably too early to go to the plan commission with
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
theoretical
It's
potential.
way too early.
Way too early.
I got
Yeah, I mean, it's premature.
a question a little bit off the topic, but at my wife's canasta game, the ladies all turned to me and said, "We hear that the park district has decided to sell one of the golf courses for housing."
No.
Now, I said, wait a minute, you got like there's 8 comments in there. I don't know if they've decided to sell a golf course. Number 2, what goes on there isn't the park district's job, decision, but is that even in any way accurate that
No.
housing might show
No,
up
it
on the
is
golf
in
course?
no way accurate that the Highland Park Country Club, which is going to be repurposed,
Okay,
is going to be housing.
I didn't think so, because it's largely,
I can tell you with absolute confidence.
okay, because that might alter
Status.
kid counts and,
It's going to be repurposed for, right now they're talking about open space.
bike trails or something.
But we don't know exactly what it's going to be, but it's not going to be like a stadium or something. Now, they do plan to significantly increase the square footage at the current country club location and build all that in and put a lot of their operations there. But, and therefore tear down Westridge.
About 15 years ago, there was going to be a 300 house.
I remember.
That was
Yes.
1987.
I
I
remember.
have a copy of the engineering report.
But you don't think any concept of housing in that area has got
No.
any legs? Okay, good. Should-
And all the new
I
housing,
would say never say never.
yeah.
well, there is that. In all the new housing, like all these new condos and apartments, there's nobody moving in there with kids.
Right.
Is there, is that a school, real estate opportunity?
It's what it is it's a floodplain.
Yeah,
So you can put a school there in theory, but it's way more expensive because of all the mitigation.
The floodplain over there.
The whole country club is. Now, the Golf Learning Center is not floodplain, but it's an old landfill.
Yeah, right.
So that also has a significant higher cost associated with putting something there. Not that we shouldn't necessarily, we considered it as I wasn't in the group when that was thought about, but the input that we got from our professional staff was that the cost was so much more, so great, the incremental cost, that it was probably not something to consider. Dan, would you comment on that?
Sorry, I wasn't
The Golf Learning Center would cost, because it's on a landfill, would have significant incremental cost associated with building.
Right, big time.
Like dramatic.
The housing development fell apart because of the retention requirements, but
It was also
in
political.
thinking about that as a school site, I still thought I didn't want to pursue it because a guy from the Corps of Engineers that's in charge of it said, "Don't waste your time." But I always thought that if you went to the east side, way away from the river, and you built a huge lake, that you would capture enough land on the east side that you could build a school with. But
Is
I don't know
Sunset a
whether-
better site to build a school? Is, keep the golf up north and use Sunset?
Now, Sunset, they're already putting $6 million into fixing up Sunset, so that's a done deal. That's going to be the surviving golf
That
course.
seems like a drier spot.
And again, could you theoretically put a school there, and could you do the mitigation? Absolutely. Is that practical and is it cost effective? I would pretty sure not.
well, that's the Park District again.
Well, I think the Park District, if it was practical and if it was cost effective, he might very well be able to talk the Park District into it. But given the fact that it isn't,
I don't
there's zero chance.
Hey, you guys think this is a good stopping point? I just don't want to keep Dan out all night long.
Yes.
We're not.
I think we can
It's
officially.
all for me.
So what are we down to now? About 98?
Yeah, we're pretty close.
50 million and change.
Did we cut anything?
Well, so that's the thing. It seems like there's a lot of ideas, but is the idea that you're going to go back to the big group and get more thoughts on it, or
Yes.
because I didn't really hear that there was any solid decisions made, but there's a lot of ideas that.
What I would like to see is you and John to compile a list of what we talked about, and for you guys to talk to the monk about with Nagel, bring in Dan, Nagel Hartray, have a conversation, and have some thoughts around these thoughts that we can talk about on the 24th.
That's the problem. I think a lot of times if you don't have numbers to go with it, it's harder to make the decision. But without you guys making a decision, there's a lot of work that might go into certain things. But we could put together maybe more round. Here's an idea of cutting this, and this, and here's a round number instead of getting into detail right now.
I think John's vision was that this would be questions that we brought to the main group.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, we're not a decision making
Right.
body.
Couldn't John ask us to come up with other questions? I mean, think about this some more and all on our, send them our ideas and
Yes.
additional suggestions that you'll compile over the weekend. I mean,
Right.
this isn't the be all and end all.
Right.
No, it's not. It would be nice, Dan, I guess you were the one taking notes tonight.
Yeah.
If you could kind of summarize your notes from tonight and send it to all of us, within the next day or two, if that's feasible in your work schedule.
Yeah,
And then
no problem.
we can look at it and then all of us can look at those notes, and if we have additional questions or ideas, we can kind of send it on to John. And that might be a good way to go forward from our discussions tonight.
Yeah, I would
Good summation.
encourage concentrating a lot on above the line items. So we could save as many of these as possible. you know, reduction in cost of materials. Maybe your assumption of what countertop should be versus what we could afford. What did you figure for countertops?
There's very limited millwork, but again, that's kind of like we're not gonna look at that until you really pick a model. So when you have a model, then we can start getting into how it's gonna be built with materials, but right now, these are general numbers based
Well,
on.
on your square foot cost, you had to make some assumption as to what level the finishes is.
It's standard school.
Well, what standard? What does the
Chevy.
high school use for?
Take it as a Chevy.
Yeah, I mean, 75% VCT, 25% carpet, Cusco ceilings, it's all the
We're not
cheapest,
using
it's the
granite
most
countertop,
inexpensive
right?
materials, it's the most bang for your buck.
I think the biggest potential driver that we could, the biggest driver of the economics is how we've sectioned the schools. Like in a lot of them, we have 4 sections in each of the schools. I think that's one of the drivers of costs, and so if there is an opportunity to say, I don't think this is the case, but if making one like a 5-section school and one a 3-section school makes sense, I think those are the types of things that would be worth, not as a takeaway for you, Dan, but for us to think about or explore.
Well, if we're talking about 19 sections, and I'll include dual language in this conversation, we're talking about 6 schools, we're talking an average of 3 with 1 extra section. If we're talking about 5 schools, then we're talking about 4, but 1 is a 3. So you've got, so the math is pretty simple. If we're going with an 8 building model, 2 middle schools and 6 elementaries, we're talking basically 3-section schools with exceptions.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where we're at. If we want to go to a 7 building model, that's a whole different conversation that none of us have had.
But the cheapest scenarios kept the smaller schools from because you're spending less on
Because we
construction.
kept the old.
You're keeping, building the sort of the BER or Model 24, which was.
Right. But operationally, the 4-section, I think this is part of your point, Megan, operationally, the 4-section schools, if you could average that, you're going to have significant savings. But 3 is pretty good. It's 2 that's awful.
That's what I asked John last night, and he said that the big, because I sort of assumed the same thing, that if you went to all these 4-section schools and got rid of the 2-section schools from an operational, which we don't see a dime of that
Right.
arrangements in here, how much different is it between 2-section and 4-section schools? And he said the reality is, by getting down to 19 sections and closing a couple
Right.
of schools, that's the majority of your savings. So he didn't think there would be, to be confirmed, material differences in annual operating expenses between the the remaining scenarios that we have.
And we're talking about staff here, so yes, you're totally right.
Staff and utilities.
Well, I think that's probably less of a driver, but I think that staff is the key. Mark, you have some comments on, is 3-section going to be substantially different than 4-section? Do you have, what's your recollection since you did the model?
Well, the best cost savings come if you take schools that are underutilized or small sections, like if you have, 2.5-section buildings, like,
Take
you
the
have
whole
4 to
school
5
out of
kids.
service.
Right.
If you combine 2 underutilized buildings, you get a lot of savings. But if you just take 2-section schools that are running with a full, decent capacity in the classrooms, 20 and 22, whatever it is, you don't get any cost savings.
So you don't get staff savings, but you get the educational advantages that we've heard so much
Right.
about earlier on in
And
this
you
process.
get some overhead. I mean, there's obviously.
You want an extra principal.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
But, I think the biggest savings, like you guys said, is just from reboundarying And,
I would guess if you have, the more schools you have, the more often you have to reboundary.
right. Or,
More schools.
or you have to be buildings.
No, we don't, we haven't. I mean, it may be true, but
Yes, okay.
What? No, it seems to me, I think what you're on is.
No, have I corrected?
Oh,
Stan corrected?
oh, okay, I was gonna say, I agree with you.
Oh, really? Well,
Well, the larger the territory, the more robust it is in terms of cost savings and so forth.
right.
Because, if you have small, you have variations in classes per grade that happen after you draw the boundaries. So there's a lot more likelihood of inefficiency if you have small boundary areas.
Right.
I mean, you'd have perfect, efficiency if you had one giant
Yeah,
school.
perfect efficiency in one giant school, yes.
So, I mean, the answer is, I think I agree. I don't know if you were attributing that to Dan Jenks or to John Fewer.
Well, I don't really know. I don't know.
But I don't think there's major differences. I mean,
As long as you're willing to read boundary
and close. I mean,
and,
you want to
and close the,
Yeah.
I have to go with the airport.
Okay, thank
Safe
you.
travels.
I'm not leaving, I'm picking up.
Oh,
I just don't think. I don't think that's going to be as much of a driver.
But I'm curious
Certainly,
about what
compared
you're,
to the capital expense, that's the biggest issue.
Right, the key difference.
I'm curious about what you're saying. It's the first time I've heard it. You're saying if we have fewer schools and bigger boundaries, that's more efficient than what we're looking at now.
It's more. I say it's more robust.
It's
Meaning
intuitive.
it's going to be likely to be more efficient for longer, and be able to absorb fluctuations in enrollment per grade, right? Because you could have, you have. I don't know how you have less volatility basically if you have a larger area.
So if, does that relate to how many teachers you need?
Yeah, exactly, right.
Correct.
Okay, so why?
But because you
why aren't
can
we
be
looking-
more
why aren't we
efficient with your
looking at
class
that?
sizes. Imagine.
Why aren't we looking at a scheme like that?
That's why
Because
That's
we've
why the
already
last group had
achieved
the
all of the
one
staff
row.
savings.
Right.
We've already
Or
achieved all of the
bigger,
staff
right.
savings by going to 19 sections. And we don't have big buildings.
The only problem is that
So we'd have to build a lot of new
we're
buildings.
trying to do something at a lower cost if there's fewer buildings. And the downside is that you have to have bigger districts, which a lot of people wouldn't be for. Why wouldn't that be worth looking
Well,
at?
I mean, this came up last night, and I think
Because they looked at it, that was their 5-building model.
This came
And
up-
what it required was building all these new, bigger buildings.
That's the
to
thing,
actually
what's the
hold
payback
time
period?
that
Are you willing to spend a lot more?
Well, also, there's another way to deal with this. Besides trying to enlarge the boundary zone, you can be willing to be more flexible in how you boundary and how frequently you change those boundaries. And last night they mentioned this idea of having flexible zones, or if you live on this, I'm just making this up. Like if you know Brayside or Virginia, if you live on Oakland or Woodland, you can choose which school to go to if they were to be open. Or you could, if you move in, you could choose to. We have more space at this school,
Well-
or Sherwood. You could, whatever it is.
The way it was put is if there's a school that is underpopulated,
Right.
they would basically say to the district, if you want to go here, that's okay.
Right, because the worst situation you have is you have, say your class cap is 23, 24, and you've got 48 kids in a grade, right? And then one person moves in. You're screwed because you got to pop a new section. But if you could just reroute that kid to where you have a seat available at another school, you're fine.
Or just push the boundaries, a
Right,
couple
yeah.
houses
Yeah.
over.
You have to Virginia. Someone has to put a seat where there's room, basically. So, the answer is it's confusing. But
I mean, BDR 3 was, the idea was to basically optimize your staff. It went down to 18 sections, and it optimized the staff costs.
by having not only larger class sizes, but an assumption that you're actually going to get close to those targets because you have fewer schools.
Right.
And you're going to go through the reboundary.
There was still an 8-school scheme, wasn't it? BDR 3?
Yeah, but that's because we put no additions underneath it.
Right.
If you have been willing to put a few additions
I
on,
thought BDR 3 would have required addition.
no,
No?
There was no money to do it.
there was no money to do it.
Well, there would have been copious amounts of money after they had done it, in my opinion, because of the cost savings were substantial.
Right, but at the time,
Right.
they really didn't have that analysis. They probably had more money available than they thought, but at the time they didn't know that. But there was no new construction that was going to take place. There was some rejiggering of things. For example, they were going to move some stuff around the cafeteria at Edgewood, but not actually put any additions on. They were just going to repurpose rooms. So there really wasn't any substantial changes.
So
And
what
they were
would the
also
community,
relying on a decline in enrollment to come. There would be a couple of, scrunched years, but then it would get better.
Right. Edgewood would have had quite a few kids this next year. And this is the year starting in September, but that went down like by 30 or 40 the year after.
so if you went down to 7
Hey,
schools,
everybody, I gotta get going.
Thank you, Julie.
if you went down
Thanks,
to
John.
7 schools,
I have to drop off too.
and you
Thank you,
had-
Dan.
and you had to build
The
additions,
caller
Julie Campbell.
has left the
and you had to
conference.
redistrict,
The
would-
caller
would that,
Correct?
you said it would be
has left
efficient
the
from a
conference.
hiring teacher standpoint, would it save money on construction costs to have 7 schools that might be bigger additions?
That's a bigger question than we really want to. What we've done is we
Well,
came
we
up
got
with
a
these
problem, we got a
models.
problem here. Let's say you go to the community and you say, we're back at 180 million, 170 million, and we've already been through that. Now, are you saying that are we gonna tell them that's the best we can do?
Well,
No, I think it's a legitimate question, but I believe, in my gut, the answer is you're going to be spending even more to build more, close a school, but you're gonna build more additions to house, so it's a higher capital to save OpEx. And then what's your payback period? I don't know, is it 20 years? I don't think the community wants the brunt of the bigger upfront money, even though it would save money in the longer term.
yeah, even though that's a bond. So the problem with as Mark and I were talking in the parking lot, that big bond number is jarring.
Right.
And but in reality, on an annual basis, you might actually save more money than the incremental cost.
Exactly.
But communicating that is almost impossible.
Oh, stretch out.
You might pay lower tax increase.
Well, if we could stretch it out to 25 years,
If you more new construction,
you can only do that if you have more new construction.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
And of course, because we had such a massive amount of new construction in the first referendum, they did it out 30 years. But, one of the missing points here, again, as Mark and I were talking about, the amount of tax increase with a $150 million referendum, we're paying it over 20 years, or even a $125 million referendum paid out over 20 years, is going to be bigger than what it would have been with a $198 million referendum spread out over 30.
Probably so.
So we're actually going to be asking, even if we ask for a huge lower amount of money, tax increase is still going to be greater.
Plus, the park district is gonna have a referendum, plus the library is gonna require some.
The
tax
park district's
increases.
not going to have, unlikely to have a
Their
referendum.
10-year plan, right now, they're not doing it for the golf course, but there's more money coming down the stream.
Yeah, but they don't necessarily need a referendum for it.
Well, they didn't need it for Rosewood Beach, but I think that's unique.
Well, we don't. I'm not
The
going to
high,
speculate about the
the high
park
school
district.
just had, in other words, the state is gonna start raising taxes, right? It's gonna be 5% now.
Income tax.
Yes, sir.
Again,
Well, the key point is if they have a property tax freeze, 5-year property tax freeze costs us $10 million a year at the end of that period. It reduces our revenue by
State of
10.
Illinois?
State of Illinois, if they implement what the governor wants, which is a 5-year moratorium on property taxes, the levy increase, that will reduce the district's revenue by $10 million a year.
How's that possible? Because we don't get a $10 million increase.
Yeah, we do. We do get it from the inflation.
Oh,
But
cut
not,
out the
you mean
inflation.
over
Over.
5 years?
At the
$10 million
At the end of
over?
10 years,
Okay.
our annual cost will be $10 million.
Got it. I thought you said
At the
10
end of,
million a
at the end
year.
of 5 years, yeah, $10
the
million a
state-
year. At the end of, it'll be
Isn't
2
gonna
million,
give the
2 million the
schools
first
as
year,
much
4
money
million
as
the
they're
second,
giving
6 million the third,
I
8
see.
million the
That
fourth,
goes
10
to-
million the fifth.
When to our sustainable,
Makes it worse.
I know, but
The purpose of Browner's tax freeze is to put public education out of business and destroy the teachers' unions. That's the
Okay.
objective of
Yeah.
the tax freeze.
Right, it's leverage. What if the community provides part of the labor? We have to work 1 day a week.
That's what we know.
painting.
All right, are we done?
Quality,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we're done.
I'll drywall.